Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to this afternoon's Tropical Storm Bertha update. We're going to go over the latest stats on Bertha as it is now about to make landfall in eastern Louisiana. So, with that being said, let's waste no time by showing you the latest satellite imagery of Bertha right now to give you an idea of what is happening. And you can see definitely not a very organized tropical system. It has been battered by wind shear for the last day or so, and it looks like today the wind shear has worsened over the storm. So now we have a completely exposed low-level center. All of the convection with Bertha is off to the south, and especially the southwest here. In fact, this convection here used to be the mid-level center, convection for Bertha, but it has since been decoupled by just how strong the wind shear has been. So because of that, we are not looking at a strong storm here, which is moving in towards Louisiana and Mississippi right now with Bertha. Thankfully, we're not dealing with a strengthening tropical storm, almost hurricane. Although, especially for like the last day or so, I'd imagine, for a while, Bertha was really kind of holding itself back against the shear as much as possible. And I can only imagine that if the shear and environmental conditions were more favorable, maybe we would have been dealing with a much more organized storm in Bertha. But luckily, that is not the case here. We have a, naked tropical storm pretty much, with some convection producing some rainfall over southeastern Louisiana, and we're still going to get impacts here along the eastern Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast. There are still more than likely tropical storm winds being experienced, and you're still going to get some occasional rainfall here. And with that being said, let's take a look at the actual statistics on Bertha right now. Maximum sustained winds at 50 miles per hour with a minimum pressure of 998 millibars. So it still has decent, stats on it right now, but it is obviously on a weakening trend, and it will continue to do so as it progresses towards the coast and eventually makes its way onshore, which is probably going to happen within the next hour or so. I mean, judging by the satellite here, it's basically already touching the shore here, so it's going to continue to do so over the next hour or so, probably make landfall in eastern Louisiana and pass near or just to the south of the New Orleans metro. And again, tropical storm force winds will be felt along the coast. In fact, they're being felt right now in Mississippi and Alabama and across portions of eastern Louisiana. And there are tropical storm warnings in effect there too, which obviously mean that we will experience tropical storm conditions. But then eventually Bertha here is going to move on off to the west. And the National Hurricane Center, at least right now, is still indicating that Bertha might try to take a kind of bend back towards the southwest a little bit and maybe scrape the Louisiana coastline all the way till Texas, and there's still a tropical storm watch in effect. And I'll show you what the model's show in a little bit, but even as this makes landfall here in eastern Louisiana, Texas and western Louisiana should not entirely count out Bertha just yet, even though more than likely whatever does happen here will probably be a weak tropical storm by the time it gets to that stage. We're probably not looking at a storm that will move back out over water here and intensify like maybe some of the models showed yesterday, I don't believe. Here's the radar shot right now showing you what Bertha is doing right now. And again, you can see the low-level center here is moving to the west, about to make landfall in eastern Louisiana here. And once again, you could very much see the fact that this is a naked storm pretty much, as all of the rainfall and, reflectivity of the precipitation here is very lackluster. In fact, there's almost no rainfall. There are a few occasional showers that are, present, some across southeastern Mississippi, some across eastern Louisiana here. And especially once those showers move through, you're going to get some gusty winds. And even without those showers, you're probably going to get some gusty winds at 40, maybe 50 miles per hour in some spots. But rainfall-wise, we're not looking at a very significant storm right now. And taking a look at the recon, too, which they are inside Bertha right now, sampling the storm. And you can see it's weakened a little bit over the last few passes. We started off at 998 millibars with the first pass of this recon mission, and now we are up to 1,001 millibars with the latest pass of the recon. So we're seeing a weakening pressure, and it absolutely makes sense given the satellite appearance of Bertha. It definitely looks like a weakening storm. And obviously will continue to do so as it moves towards the west and moves onshore. But again, tropical storm conditions are still likely for the coastline here. Taking a look at the wind speed probabilities along the coast here, eastern Louisiana, especially southeastern Louisiana, still very likely to see tropical storm force winds. I mean, anywhere that's in this kind of golden brown color here and inward, so that pretty much encompasses the coastline of Mississippi and Alabama and most of southeastern Louisiana here, at least a 50% chance or higher of experiencing tropical storm force winds. So we are still going to see that either way. This is a weak storm and definitely a very sheer, disorganized storm, a naked storm, as I like to say, but this still has some winds with it, and this will still bring impacts as well as rainfall. And again, given the sheer nature of Bertha, we're probably not going to see a lot of rainfall here because looking at the satellite again, most of the convection is being kind of suppressed down to the south here. And we'll actually have to watch this area here and maybe see whether or not the low-level center might try to, jump southward a little bit, and maybe this will try to get a second life here just off the coast south of Louisiana. And I'll show you the models in a little bit to suggest whether or not that might happen. But still, most of the precipitation, once again, is southerly weighted. So along the coast here, especially Mississippi and Alabama, probably not going to see a lot of rainfall, but a flash flood risk is still in place, and it is at a marginal chance right now. Storm surge, though, is going to be another thing that we need to watch for. 2 to 4 feet of storm surge expected from the mouth of the Mississippi River to the Mississippi-Alabama border, and 1 to 3 feet of storm surge expected from the Walton County line, Okaloosa-Walton County line in Florida, all the way up to Port Bolivar in Texas. So generally, again, along the northern Gulf Coast here, for most, you still will experience impacts from Bertha, even if it is a weak storm. And storm surge, too, definitely not something to take lightly here. And especially, we're going to see the highest values here in eastern Louisiana and the Mississippi coastline, given the fact that Bertha is coming in from the east here, which will directly push a lot of the water onshore, especially in eastern Louisiana and along the Mississippi coastline. And 2 to 4 feet, again, not something to really mess around with. It's not a lot of storm surge. It's not, record-breaking 20 feet storm surge like we've seen in the past in this area. But 2 to 4 feet could still cause some localized flooding right along the coastline. So also keep in mind of the storm surge as well. All right, so what is the future looking like with Bertha from here? Most of the model guidance as of the 12Z run still taking Bertha, making it kind of do a southwesterly dip here and eventually move back offshore in the western Gulf. But I do question whether or not that might actually happen, given the fact that, as you can see here, the low-level center is moving straight due west. And we are dealing with a pretty much naked, nearly naked low-level center that is moving west. And once it gets on land here, it is probably going to fizzle out pretty quickly. So I question whether or not these models are correct. But the biggest, most logical explanation for why these models are showing a track here that bends back to the southwest is more than likely because they show the center trying to reform back down to the south here and like barely scraping the coast and maybe trying to go back out over the open water in the western Gulf. So let's see, do the hurricane models do that here? Starting off with the H-Wharf for the 12Z run, which is loaded. And you can see here, H-Wharf is pretty much in line with what Bertha is doing right now. It makes it move off to the west here. We eventually get a landfall in eastern Louisiana by later this afternoon. And then eventually this scrapes the coast here and gradually begins to weaken. And then the model tries to show some sort of center reformation that happens due to aggressive convection here to the south offshore. But at least according to the H-Wharf here, it doesn't quite succeed. So we kind of have a broad remnant low here that progresses to the west and eventually into Texas. But that still looks like we will get rainfall here for the Texas coastline associated with whatever remnant is left of Bertha. So I guess the H-Wharf, one of the hurricane models, that's one down. They do show some sort of center reformation. That kind of fails. So what about the HAFS model? Probably one of the most highly regarded hurricane models right now. And they do show the low-level center here. They do try to show some sort of reformation of the center. In fact, this actually gets down to 992, 994 millibars. So maybe some sort of reformation tries to happen here, according to the HAFS, as this moves, southwest and back over the open waters of the Western Gulf. And then eventually it makes landfall here in Texas, presumably as a weak to moderate tropical storm. Intensity-wise, though, they actually, interestingly enough, make this a hurricane here in the Western Gulf. So this is a little bit questionable in my opinion. It's really going to have to come down to whether or not, this low-level center dies out, but whatever convection here to the southwest is able to take over and drill down a new low-level center from the surface and take over the storm, and eventually try to give it some more life here in the Western Gulf, in which, if that's the case, then that would put the Texas coastline here more at risk of, receiving sizable impacts from Bertha. And I mean, tropical storm watches are still in effect right now for Texas and western Louisiana, so impacts are still likely. But I guess if we're talking about more sizable impacts rather than just the remnants of a weakening system here, we'll have to watch and see whether or not the models are right, and that we do actually get a reformation of the center to the south, away, south of the Louisiana coastline, back over the open waters of the Gulf. But for now, Bertha is about to make landfall in eastern Louisiana, and impacts will be felt along eastern Louisiana and Mississippi through the remainder of today, and eventually they will spread westward throughout southeastern and southern Louisiana along the coastline. So if you guys are in those areas, keep an eye out on the tropics and keep monitoring conditions, and you will be dealing with tropical storm impacts, more than likely with tropical storm force wind gusts, rainfall. You'll probably deal with some of that as well, and especially with the storm surge too if you're in eastern Louisiana and Mississippi. Keep in mind out for that, and do not underestimate that potentially being an issue as well. But beyond that, not looking like a super serious storm, which is obviously good. And it is early in the season anyway, so it's not August yet, so we typically don't get strong landfalls, particularly strong landfalls anyways right now. But a storm is a storm, and we will be tracking it, and we will be continuing to monitor the conditions on Bertha throughout the day. So, I might have another update for you later this afternoon or this evening, depending on if things change and we do get interesting, trends with Bertha, especially if we see the signs of a, center relocation or something like that. But if not, make sure to just stay tuned to my Twitter page, in which I'll be having updates throughout the rest of the afternoon there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I have the same name as I have here on YouTube, @Danilo Evangelista. So make sure to follow me on Twitter. And if you haven't already done so, make sure to subscribe on YouTube as well. Both of them are free. So I hope you guys do it if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, though. That's going to wrap it up for now. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. Keep it tuned to the tropics as we will continue to watch Bertha. But for now, I'm Danilo Evangelista, and I'll talk to you guys again later.